Welcome everybody to the first of our online Open for Business webinars, and really happy to welcome Alexi Boyd, who's going to be hosting the What's Your Small Business Lockdown Plan this morning. Now, just for everybody, I'm just going to read through a few little bits of information to help you this morning. So basically this morning you'll be muted and your cameras will be turned off for the duration. So the best way is to communicate is through the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of the middle of your screen. So if you've got any questions, please post them there, and Alexi will either address them through the presentation or at the end. And we'll also have a session, a further Q&A session at the end if there's anything we haven't dealt with. We will, after the webinar, the slides will be made available, so please don't worry about recording email addresses or web addresses, etc. They'll all be available through the presentation. The webinar will be recorded, so it will be put on the council website afterwards. So if you need to refer back to it, you can run through it again. And also, please stick around at the end. There'll be some questions we'd love you to answer so that we can improve what we're doing. So this is Ku-ring-gai's first session. This is being supported by City of Ryde Council. We're working together to put as many events on as we can to help small businesses in this difficult time. So hopefully you'll get some really useful information out of today's session. I'll just give you a bit of information about our host this morning, Alexi. Now, Alexi Boyd is Australia's leading small business radio presenter. She's an experienced panel facilitator, event host, podcaster. She's also a fully qualified BAS agent, and she's been working in the small business area for a long time. She runs her own practice and is passionate about helping her clients control their own business and destiny. So hopefully with all Alexi's wonderful experience and all the connections she has, she'll be able to share a lot of really useful information with you. So I'll hand you over to Alexi, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of today. If you have any feedback, please answer the questions at the end, and also feel free to drop me an email from the email that I sent you this morning. So over to you, Alexi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for the lovely introduction, Will. Today's session is going to be all about your business and you gaining the strategies and processes and procedures that will help you, I guess, use the time that we've got in this unusual world we live in to make the most of the additional time that you've got. We talk a lot as small businesses about not having enough time to work on our back-end processes. So this is a great opportunity to really utilize this additional time that we've been given if you're indeed in that position. And today's presentation is about giving you some tips, some strategies. So please pick out what you will, what is pertinent to your business. Don't feel as though everything that I'm going to be presenting today is valuable to you. And like Will said, these slides will be available to you as attendees, which means that after you've written down some notes, you can go back and see if there's anything additional that you might be think it would be valuable for you. So just a couple of housekeeping things as well. From myself is a little bit about myself. It's based on a document that I produced on LinkedIn, so some of you might have seen that as well. And just as I said, please make sure that you ask some questions as we go, and I'll try and get to those as we progress. One thing we're not going to talk about today is the stimulus package, the cash flow boost, JobKeeper, Job Seeker. It's obviously very complex and definitely something that you should be seeking from your financial advisor rather than from a high-level discussion like this. A little bit of a disclaimer about this as well. Obviously, I am not a financial advisor, and you need to seek proper financial advice when it comes to your business and your specific needs. I am, however, a BAS agent, so there's a little bit of information about there. Speaking of advisors, if you do seek an advisor, please make sure that they're properly accredited, particularly in the bookkeeping world. Make sure that they're an accredited BAS agent, and you can go to websites like the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, which is, of course, a big professional association, and check and make sure that people are accredited there. That's a great starting point if you're looking for support in that way. So let's begin. We're going to be talking today about a few various topics which are important for everyone's business. I'm hoping that this genetic material means that you can decide what is important for you. Obviously, like I mentioned, there's a whole stack of things that we always wish we had more time. I'll have a look at the questions as we go, but please understand that I'm not an expert in any of these fields. With all of the networking we do as small businesses, and through all my years of experience of interviewing people on my program, I've gained a lot of information just out of a sense of curiosity and knowing what small businesses want to know. So that's how I'm delivering this information today. If you want to deep dive into any of these topics for your business, I'll be at the end of each section giving you some links and some places that you can go to as a starting point. But of course, don't forget about your small business networks, the people that you connect with in the normal life that you might have met at a networking meeting or you may have connected with online. Check with your professional associations to find the best expert for you and your field, because obviously we're all in different sectors of the economy and we need to make sure the people that are supporting us understand where we're coming from. And also, as you go today, think about making this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. There's tons of things that we can be doing to work on our business rather than in it all the time. But these suggested points are a way for you to create a bit of a framework today of things that you can begin just to help get the ball rolling. We might be looking at potentially up to a year in isolation. For many of us, we won't be working. And so this is a great time to use as much time as possible to really squish in some targeted strategies for your business. So see how you go, and then we'll tackle each one as we go. So let's talk about working on your website first. Now, this is the big one that everyone says, oh, I haven't looked at my website for years and I haven't updated the blog, and I don't even know whether or not it's relevant to me anymore. And I think that's the cornerstone. When was the last time you even looked at your website? I mean, I'll put my hand up and say, for one part of my business, it's literally been years. And it was a few months ago that I looked at the website and realized that it wasn't even working. It was actually not functioning. There was something wrong with it, and I didn't even realize. So here's a good opportunity for you to take a step back and look at your website from the perspective of the viewer. So how do people who are not in your business, not in your industry, view it? What are they seeing? What's the first thing that pops up? Because if you haven't visited your website in a while, this is a good chance for you to look at it with fresh eyes. When you're looking at it, again, test all the pathways. So that's click through all the links and make sure they go to where you want them to. In a lot of cases, they can be broken. A classic example is the capture. Apparently, the capture screen actually needs a new plugin every so often. So if that doesn't work, it means that people are not able to potentially contact you through the website. The other question is, what web address or what email address are those queries going to? Because if it's an email address you're no longer looking at or supporting, then you've got a problem because people have been trying to get hold of you and they can't. Look at your contact page again. Some people are reluctant to have your full details there. They might be reluctant to have phone numbers or email addresses or further information or LinkedIn pages. In today's world, that just means that your clients can't necessarily get hold of you. So the other thing to look at is, does your website actually reflect what you do now? So when you built it 2 or 3 years ago, or you paid stacks of money for someone to do it, your business will have evolved. And we're going to talk a lot today about the evolution of business. And you progress and your skills progress and you improve. And in fact, you gain better qualifications or you gain better experience, or the types of clients that you service changes. Is that reflected in your website? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be updating it every few months, but this is a good opportunity to stop and look at what you've got in front of you and say, oh, okay, what is it that people are looking at? What do they see when they see me? Have you asked for recent testimonials? So if people are going to your website regularly, they're going to see the same testimonials all the time. And LinkedIn is a great way to ask for testimonials from people that you're connected with in your industry, or clients or suppliers or key stakeholders in your business. So ask for a testimonial there and then copy and paste that text and put it somewhere in your website. Keep that updated. A lot of people think that the way you keep a website updated is through a blog. Now, if you happen to have a radio show, that's really easy because you've got constantly new content coming in. It is unfortunately, a blog can also mean that if you haven't updated it for say 6 or 12 months, it's pretty obvious that you haven't even looked at your website for 6 to 12 months. So if you're not the sort of person that's going to be on there a lot of the time and you're not going to update your blog regularly, perhaps think about not actually having a blog there in the first place, because it really time stamps your website. Another good tip is to get someone else who is in your industry and also someone who's not in your industry to critique the website. Everyone's got lots of time at the moment and offer to do it for each other. And that means going through all of the website, and you know, you might get a response like, oh, there's too many words here, or these links don't work, or oh my God, when was that photo taken? Because you look about 12. So have a think about what other people's perception are and ask them to be really critical. I mean, you really want your website to be pulled apart. Then once you've got all that information and ways that you want to change it, if you don't have the skills to update your website, get all of that into one big list, give it to a web developer and go, right, here's my login details. Here's my access to my website. Please fix all of these things. The more succinct you can be about that list, the less it's going to cost. So here's a great opportunity to go through your website and fix it all up. And then the last thing is, do you need to start again? Is it really not reflective of your business at all? Is it starting to look old and dated? Are the photos a little bit out of focus and clearly taken from an iPhone 3? So all those things have to be factored in. And then of course, costs are involved in that. Or the other alternative is you can brush up on your WordPress skills. What a great time to sit there and watch lots of tutorial videos on the how to actually build a website from scratch. And if you're going to do that, I've got a really good tip with relation to building websites, and that is search for themes relating to and what you do. So say, for example, you're a conference speaker. So you might type in great themes for conference speakers. And then up will pop a couple of articles where people have gone through, experts have gone through all the different themes that are available. And they've suggested maybe the top 5 themes for a speaker at a conference. And then you can have a look at those themes and go, okay, well, does that work? And all right, that's WordPress. I think I can work out how to do this. And then maybe fiddle around with it for a bit. And when you eventually get frustrated, that's maybe when you engage with a professional. But try and have a really good map laid out on how you want your website to look. But importantly, what's your call to action? What is it that people are engaging with you? So here's some top sites with website building resources as well. I've got a couple of podcasts on there that talk about building a website. And then, of course, if you're starting from scratch, the way you can look at that. And don't worry about writing these websites down.
Alexi, just if you can hear me, just so everybody knows, on the 22nd of this month, we actually have a 2-hour online session about setting up an online shop. So we have an expert who will be going through the process about how to set up an online shop using WordPress. So please, after this session, I'll send the further emails out, and you can register for that, and then you'll have all the information you need to do that yourself. Obviously, it might be useful to get a professional involved at some point, but it'll certainly give you the insights that you'll need to start.
And we should also mention that this is a really great introductory presentation for all the fantastic online webinars that are coming from Ku-ring-gai Council. There's actually stacks of things that are going to really deep dive into each of these subjects. Remember, guys, if you've got any questions on each of these topics, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. If I don't know the answers, I'm going to, or actually type them in, I should say, into the Q&A box in the bottom of your panel. And if there's anything I don't know, I will endeavour to try and find out and get back to everyone through the further links. So let's talk about business plan. Now, I deliberately chose that photo because business planning is hard. It's difficult, but I think it's easier after you've been in business for a couple of years. And now is a great opportunity if you have been functioning and changing and evolving. What we'll probably do is, yes, Paul, you've asked a question about all the information on the slides. You'll be definitely receiving all of that. You'll be copied in on all of those slides, definitely, every single one of them. So let's talk about your business plan. It is quite general in nature. I personally have always struggled with trying to think about strategy and where I'm heading, but perhaps after you've been in business for a while, it's a little bit easier to do. It might be out of date from when you first did it, when you first started a business, and it's probably not relevant anymore, or you may be starting from scratch. At the end of this section, I'm going to give you some pointers on where to go to if you need to start again with your business plan. There's some great websites from government departments that offer you that solution. So this is a good time to go back to a simple business checklist to see if those foundations are in place, and go back to what people suggest are the components of a business plan, and check you've got them all in there. And then ask yourself, do I even need a business plan? Is that something that's relevant for me? Some people who are sole traders, for example, and feel, well, I'm the one in control, there's nobody else coming into my business, it's not really necessary for me. But it's good to know what the purpose of them is. Marketing is actually a really important part that many people don't include in their business plan to begin with, because they don't know which direction they're heading. And market research is an important part of your plan. So have a look at who is your ideal client right now as opposed to who it was at the beginning. Has that changed? Have they evolved? Where are they looking for you for information? Is it time to create a mission statement? So is it time to think of your why? This is something as someone who's very procedural and practically driven, I really struggle with what is my why, and probably where I need a business coach to help me. But think about everything being connected. So you can't have a finance strategy without considering how much you're going to spend on marketing, for example. You can't look at your overall plan without thinking of your targets. So all of these elements are quite interconnected. And this is where using a scaffolding of an existing business plan suggested by a group such as Realise Business or other business support groups, that's where a really good starting point might be for you if you haven't done it for a while, or you haven't looked at your business plan in a couple of years, which I'm sure many of us have. I want to talk a little bit about finance. Now, this is something that I'm quite passionate about, being a BAS agent, but it's really important that you familiarise yourself with your profit and loss statement and understanding what the three elements are, and asking certain questions of yourself when it comes to your finances. You know, when did you last put up your prices? Have you honestly been going for the last 3 or 4 years without even putting a CPI increase? And then ask yourself why. Is it because you're not comfortable with it, or because you don't feel your clients might get sticker shock? Is it time to start implementing that? Do you split out your sales into different accounts? So as your business evolves, as it grows and changes, you may be consulting to, say, private, and you might be consulting to consumers, and you might be consulting to business. Is that something where you need to split out those sales so that over time you can say, are my marketing strategies working to boost sales in a certain direction? If you don't split out your sales, if you lump them all into one code, then how can you possibly know where your business is going and how it's changing? Your costs of sales, those of you who are not familiar with that term, it basically means anything you bring into the business, you increase the cost of and then sell them to your customers. Is there ways that you can reduce that? Could there be better supplier arrangements? Could you buy in bulk? Could you look for a different supplier? Are you just buying from the same person? Now's a good time to do research to reduce those costs. And then in terms of your overheads, your expenses, where can you cut costs? I mean, particularly now when we're all experiencing such a loss of income. What about subscription creep? What about all those subscriptions that you have that you don't use anymore? I was going through one of my clients' works the other day, and they had a New York Times subscription they were paying $9 a month for. And I said, when was the last time you read the New York Times? And you're saying, oh, about 3 years ago. So look at those costs and see which ones you can remove out. And then also think about your big costs, like your insurance. Could you spread that out over time in order to have better cash flow, and then have a better understanding of what your expenses are? Now, that little diagram I've got on the left-hand side of the screen is actually an expense calculator. The purpose of that is for you to work out, of all of your overheads, how much does it cost you per hour to run your business? So take the total amount for the annual and then divide it by 40, because we all work 40 hours in a week, right? And then divide it by 48, because you only work 48 weeks in a year, also untrue. And then you'll get an hourly cost, and then add them all up, and then you realize that's how much it costs me to run my business per hour. If you're not charging that per hour, you're actually running at a loss. So have a think about that. Very, very, very important. Last thing about finance, please make sure that you've got a set aside account, or a tax account, or some sort of different account to your check account, so that every time you get paid that large invoice, 10% automatically goes into that account. And that is not your money. That is actually the ATO's money. because you've got to pay them their 10% GST. You've got to pay your employees super. You've got to put aside the pay-as-you-go withholding, and you have to put aside your tax. As a base, put aside 20% of every sale. And that way, at least you're setting aside the amount that you need, and you don't have to have a stress every time BAS period comes along. What about growth? Now, you have to ask yourself when you're doing all this business planning, what does this actually mean for you as a business? So is that taking on employees? Is it getting bigger premises? Is it, you know, thinking about your personal goals when having a business? Are you doing this because you want better work-life balance? And then ask yourself, who do you want to employ? Now, I'm not suggesting now we're in a growth period. Far from it. Many of us have actually lost staff, have had to stand down people. We're trying to deal with the JobKeeper. But ask yourself, in the ideal world, when this is all back up and running, who do you want as part of your team, and what sort of leader do you want to be? Do you want someone else to be the leader? Do you want to avoid that? Do you want someone to maybe help you with that management side of things? And then also start thinking about budgeting for growth. Wages and rent will be some of the biggest ticket items in your expense codes. So ask yourself, how much do I have to set aside for that? What will that person, what will that office manager or that salesperson in my industry cost me? Start investigating that. Start looking at, you know, jobs online. What are other people expecting to get paid per hour? And then also investigate that employment side of things. This is a good time to talk to your advisor about understanding the difference between realistic figures versus actual. So this is a great opportunity to do some of your research. So in summary, business planning, business.gov.au, which is the federal level, has some great tips for business planning. I might actually just show you those. Won't be a moment.
And while you're doing that, Alexi, I'm just currently in the process of setting up a business planning session in the next month or so. So just keep an eye out for that, everybody. I haven't got the details yet, but I'll soon have them for you.
Excellent. Okay. And Will, can you see that second screen now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is the business planning as part of business.gov.au. There's quite a lot of resources in here which are really, really special and really helpful. And what I like about it is that they've actually split out, although a marketing plan needs to be part of your business plan, they've split out the two. And what they have here is they have obviously how to determine what it's for. It is a little bit basic for those of us who have been in business for a while, but as I mentioned, it's a good idea to go back to the basics with how this works. And then interestingly, also want to draw people's attention to a business checklist. Again, this is all the things that you need to do when you're starting a business. Can you make sure you've done those, particularly when it comes to your business structure? And make sure you've done things like ensure that your business name is still registered. Did you accidentally forget about that business name registration renewal? That could be a real problem for you. Maybe diarise when things are due for renewal that are really important in your business, things like workers' compensation, things like renewal of domains, renewal of business names, and just keep on top of those things. So here's a good opportunity to go back through that original checklist. And then, of course, if those of you who are looking at growing the business for the purpose of selling, there's also a great tip here on how to have a succession plan. Possibly a bit too late to have done the emergency management plan, however. So going back to what we were saying let me just bring back my presenter view. So we've been talking about the business plan resources, and Realise Business here in New South Wales has a great tool to develop and monitor business planning, and so does business.gov.au. That's actually been one of my go-to places because I've always found that their resources have been very good for many years.
You might need to maximise your screen there, Alexi. I'm seeing your next slide as well.
Oh, hang on a second. Is that better? Is that better, Will? I'm assuming you can see that.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself just there. So yes, that's all good.
Yay for the NBN. Okay, let's talk about contracts and legal. So I'm not going to get too bogged down in these because there's a lot of information here. Again, you'll be getting these slides, but this is a great chance for you to actually sit down and recognize that there's a lot of aspects of your business that you don't realize. You have more relationships in which you should have contracts in place than you realize. I think a lot of us accept the fact that employees should have employment contracts. We understand that. But have you considered your relationship with contractors? And do you have a contractual relationship with them? Have you set in stone what your expectations of them are, how frequently they're going to invoice, how frequently you're going to pay them, what you expect from them in each of the scenarios where they're doing work? Is it project-based? Is it hourly-based? And then also, when did you last look at your engagement letter with your clients? Now, this is a big one. I've seen people produce information for engagement letters for engagement letters, and actually remove things. So they've paid all this money for, say, a lawyer to produce a great engagement letter for them, and then over the time they'll take chunks away, like, oh, it's not really necessary for people to sign on this, or to provide me with a PO, or to give me their invoicing details. It absolutely is. And so you've got to keep those as robust as possible. So this is a great chance, when we've got time, to actually look at our engagement letter. Is it scary? Does it make people feel as though they're being pressured into something? But at the same time, you need to protect yourself. In particular, and this is all over the news with small business, payment times. Have you stipulated in your engagement letter what your acceptable payment times are? And then is that reflected in your invoices? There's no point in putting in an engagement letter, okay, you can pay me in 4 weeks, and then putting in your invoices that they've got 2 months to pay. You need to make sure that each of those things line up. And then also make sure that people sign it. Now, it can be argued whether or not it's legally binding, but all of these different aspects of invoicing and collecting money and chasing money, as long as all those ducks are lined up in a row, then you've got more of a robust argument if it ends up in court, if you end up having to fight for the money that is rightfully yours. And this form is actually an integral part of your payment terms process. So if you are seeking advice legally for something like this and you're chasing funds, what you'll find is that a lot of lawyers will say, well, did they sign anything? How did you outline your payment terms? Because if you didn't have any, then sure, they can pay you in 6 months. So don't make it a grey area for your business. Also, in your engagement letter, does it actually incorporate payment increases over time? So if you're on a rolling contract, are you going to get paid the same in 2 years? Or have you simply added in a small note at the bottom that says this is going to be incorporated CPI increases, or we reserve the right to increase our prices according to costs, or something like that? And then with all legal things, even if it's something as simple as an engagement letter, do think about engaging with a good legal advisor who can look over these things and make sure that they are as robust as you need them to be. It's very, very important, and I can't stress that enough, because so many times we see in small business that payment terms are terrible, but we do have to accept a little bit of responsibility of that ourselves, and know that, you know, perhaps we didn't set it in stone at the beginning of the relationship to explain what our expectations were. Now, this is something that's a real bugbear of mine, the employee versus contractor situation. I know it's complex. I know that there's 6 different pieces of legislation, both at a state and a federal level, that actually rely on one of these tools. And I know that those tools are all different for each organisation that we deal with. But let's just talk about the ATO's definition of an employee versus a contractor. So it's no longer 80-20. So if you're still operating on somebody works mostly for me, therefore they're a employee, or they don't work mostly for me, therefore they're a contractor, that is a real defunct rule. Just because they've got an ABN and they're invoicing you doesn't make them a contractor. Just because it's short-term work, just because it's project-based work, or you're not paying them by the hour, and just because you both agreed does not make it the case. And it's very important that you as the employer, or the potential employer, are the one who's actually determining this. And I'm going to show you just something that is a very useful tool. Won't be a moment. And this is a very useful tool when trying to determine whether or not someone is an employee or a contractor. So let's have a look at this one here. So this is the ATO website where you've got the employee versus contractor tool. Now, like with everything that you might do when you're asking the ATO a question or you're using one of their online tools, whatever information they give you, they are bound by. So it doesn't matter who you speak to or how ridiculous the question, you should always write down who you spoke to and ask for a reference number with anyone from the ATO. The same thing goes with the online calculator tools. So this is an online calculator in which you can, when you're thinking about a particular employee / contractor and you're trying to work out what they are, you need to complete this. Now, it's a very simple tool. As you can see, as you go, the questions give you, they give you more and more options to complete. Do you allow the worker to pay someone else to do this for them? So this goes back to the criteria that they're helping to determine what it is. Is it the set amount? Is it? So you can go through this process, and then when you've finished, it'll spit out an answer for you, and then you know where you stand when it comes to tax law, and you print that out. Print it as a PDF, and then actually name the document with the person who you were thinking of at the time. So that's actually a very good plan. Now, I'm also going to take you to another page, which is all about fair work. Now, those of you who have not yet employed, it's quite important. It's such a complex avenue, fair work, but think about who you might want to be your first employee. Think about their role, and then start familiarizing yourself with this website. How much do you pay them? What award do they come under? And what you need to remember is that 80% of people employed in Australia, or 10% less than that now, are actually by an award. You need to get familiar with that award and what the requirements are. There are allowances, restrictions on how many hours they can work or what the minimum number of hours there are. And you need to understand the difference between a part-time or a casual employee. Now, again, I'm not an expert where an HR advisor comes in very handy, or your BAS agent bookkeeper can be very helpful with this as well. But what I wanted to show you was this is a very important document that every time you employ someone, must supply them with this up-to-date document. So if you've still got a Fair Work statement from 3 years ago, it's been updated. They're constantly updated. So every time you employ someone, a new person, check the Fair Work website, Google search, and make sure you've got the most up-to-date. You have to supply them with this PDF. It doesn't need to be in hard copy. Nothing does these days, but you need to give them all of this information. They've got it there in front of them, and you need to familiarize yourself with them. Don't just give it to them and not read it. As an employer, certain obligations, and it's very important that you familiarize yourself with that. Now, a lot of you are not employing now, I'm aware, but what I want you to do is familiarize yourself with the process, because often when we're employing someone, it's really, really busy and we need someone now and we need someone quickly. So now is a good time to, while we've got the time, to take a step back and look at, well, what exactly would I be doing in this instance? So, let's see where we were. Okay, so we talked about the employee versus contractor tool, a little bit about little unknown facts. Understand what your rights and responsibilities are. Understand what your employees' rights and responsibilities are when it comes to what's known as national employment standards. So that's another document you should understand. Fair Work is incredibly complex. We have the most vastly complex legislation anywhere in the world, and anyone who's run a business with employees will tell you that how complex it is, definitely. But not suggesting you need to be an HR expert, but think about that first role, who you're going to employ, and then steps you would need to take when you're in a hurry to get that up and running. Now, staff maps are something that not a lot of small businesses use, but they're actually incredibly useful. This is a great example resource you could create now before you think about hiring people. So why are they important? It's because they set expectations. It's not a legal document, but it helps due diligence. So, imagine yourself standing in front of a judge and this person claims that this happened, and you've got all this documentation to show that you did due diligence. You did the best to outline what your expectations were. It is there to help cover yourself. And remember that a bad employee can change the culture of an entire workplace, even if it's just one employee and there's only you. It's your workplace that you need to protect. So this document is all about, I guess, big stuff, what you expect from people, anti-bullying, how are they going to behave on social media? What are they going to do with your intellectual property? If they leave, what can they take with them? How are you logging their hours? And that's also important as well. And also make sure that there's a sign-off page. So my understanding, not a lawyer, these are not legal documents. They're almost an addendum to your employment agreement. It's an extra resource that you provide your employees when they start. But get them to sign it. Get them to sign it to say that they have read and understood what's in the document. Handing it to them, I never looked at it. But if you hand it to them, they sign it, and then you keep a soft copy of the signed version, then that has more meaning, obviously, and very important that you get them to date it. And then using it, you're talking about, making sure that they adhere to the policies, but you need to adhere to them as well. If you're making sense, then you need to make sure that you're keeping up your end of the bargain. You're not pressuring them. You're not swapping and changing their hours at the last minute. And you have to obviously agree to what's there as well. So and don't worry, everyone keeps asking me, is in the what am I trying to say, the slides, is it becoming of absolutely all the slides? And if you want anything, because it's difficult to cut and paste off slides, let me, I'm happy to send it to you as, something that's easier to use and cut and paste into those things. Here's some great legal resources.
Alexi, sorry to interrupt. I think you keep bumping the microphone with your hand.
Oh, do I? I'm so sorry.
It's wonderful. You're getting very animated, which is great. But I think there's getting some static when you do that. So just be aware.
Right. Thank you. So let's talk about those legal resources. As always, there's a couple of really great small business podcasts there with some fantastic legal people who I'm into are full of useful information. And again, it's me interviewing with all that curiosity that I come from as a small business expert. And obviously that Fair Work information statement and the employee versus contractor tool, that will all be in there. Now, let's, conscious of time, so we've got a couple more things to get through. Social media planning. Now, I do go into a state of overwhelm when I think about this because there are so many options out there. There's so many opportunities. There's so many places I feel like I need to be, and I need there constantly. So I guess the first question is, do you need to be everywhere? Where are your clients? Go back to that business plan, look at your ideal client and go, well, where are they consuming their knowledge and their information? I don't need to be on, I'm a bookkeeper. I don't need to be on, I'm not even on Instagram. And to be honest, I'm not even on Twitter because I find it a bit icky. But for me, my sweet spot is LinkedIn. I know that because I'm business to business. And Facebook, I don't get a lot of traction from that, but I'm kind of playing around with it. Start with just one area that you can be confident that your clients are absorbing their social media presence. Ask your clients now, where are they consuming their social media information? What sort of are they following? Ask them what companies they're looking at. Are they following you? Have they ever actually seen any posts on social media? Or do they go, oh, I don't need to because you've got all the information that I need that way? Is what you do online complementing your other communications? Now, this is where a strategist is the expert, but ask yourself, if I pop something on LinkedIn, does it match what I'm offering on my website? So I'll give myself as an example. I do online panel moderating. If I pop that on LinkedIn, is there a section on my website, online panel moderating? Because if people are very interested in that service, they'll see it on their LinkedIn feed or go to my website. And if it's not there, guess what? You've just lost a sale. So this is where all that evolution and that integration between the business plan and your presence and what you look like. And I've included that picture on what a perfect line presence might be, because I think we can go a bit crazy with what we look like. And classic example is those ridiculous Zoom backgrounds. Now, I'll be honest, I did dress around a little bit so it looked fairly professional and had microphones and things in the background. However, I think that with enterprise and space and things where you fold into the background, all of this is your online. You need to think about it, particularly in this digital world, and make sure, as we all know, that it's you, that what people are seeing actually reflects who you are. And think about that, because nowadays all people are consuming is you online. That's it. So you need to make sure that it represents who you are, because you don't want them meeting you in a year's time going, oh my God, who is that? That's nothing like what I've seen. It's ridiculous. Also think about varying your content. So, you know, are you writing copy? Are you including a video? Are you thinking about being part of a podcast? Are you doing audio recordings? Even little snippets. It gives people different ways of digesting you. And in this online world, you don't just want a static picture of yourself and that all that it is. And you may not be, I can't write copy. I hate it. I hate writing content for my website. I hate writing stuff that says all about me. But I'm perfectly happy to stand in front of a microphone and talk about myself, funnily enough, for 30, 40, 50 minutes. So my medium is the microphone and is all content. That's where I'm the most comfortable. So ask yourself, where are you the most comfortable, and reflect that. And making sure that everything links. And ask yourself, are you embarrassing yourself on Twitter? Are you being too political? Because it's not difficult for people to search for you and something may pop up. Unfortunately, that's the reality. You have to be conscious as a professional of everything you do online. I will admit, after a couple of glasses of wine last night, I got a bit snippy at someone who talked about accountants versus bookkeepers and how the bookkeepers all need to stop ganging up on the accountants. And I got a bit snippy and thought about it later on and went, that was probably quite dumb. So you do need to be conscious of it, and wine and social media maybe don't mix. Also think about extrapolating your personal profile from your business. So I consider Facebook to be personal. I don't really position myself as a business apart from Small Biz Matters, which has its own page, but I only let the two cross over. And that way that I can treat that as my personal place. And in a time when we all need it, that I think is very important. So there's a whole lot of stuff around social media because there is a lot of information out there with where to go. I'm actually not sharing many links. This is just my thoughts and how I've positioned myself, but it's very different for how you. My main thing I want you to take away from this is make sure that it's all connected. Is your business plan and your plan relevant? And also plan out the next 12 months. So think 12 months, where am I going to be? What do I look like? What do I say? And what mediums am I going to use? And then drip feed it out and schedule things. But just remember to keep them all. Don't try and just copy and paste things that other people have said, because it becomes very disingenuous very quickly.
Can I just butt in there quickly, Alexi? Just to let everybody know, you did mention the whole range of social media there, Alexi. I just wanted to let everyone know that on the 29th, we're running a 2-hour Facebook session with one of 9 registered Facebook trainers in Australia and New Zealand, Heather Porter, and she's absolutely amazing. Some of you may have been to sessions with her before, but I really encourage you to come along. Even if you're not looking at using Facebook for your business, she'll give you a lot of insights into possible ways you can use it. Even if you're in a B2B situation, Facebook may be useful depending on your business model. So yeah, I encourage you to come along to that, 10 o'clock on the 29th. I'll send more information after this.
I've seen Heather present twice, and each time I walk away with so many notes and so much ideas and strategy. She's actually one of the best persons. She's come on my radio show as well. The best people I've ever heard speak about social media in general. Insurance and security. This is our last topic we're going to cover today. Now, again, quite legally heavy. Think about going, you know, those forms you fill out where, you know, you do it in a hurry because insurance broker's, you know, breathing down your neck and needs the forms done. So you just quickly fill them out. When was the last time you actually read those? And does it reflect what you do in your business? So example is, I'm obviously now doing educational content and I'm delivering that on an online forum. I went back to my insurance documents and I made sure that my insurer was aware that I was using a different platform, that I was delivering this content, and whether it's paid or unpaid, you need to make sure your professional indemnity covers you for the data and the information that you're providing. That's why you saw the disclaimer at the beginning of the presentation, because my insurers went, yeah, you might want to add that in. Ask them for their advice with things that you can do to reduce your indemnity. If you've got a good insurance broker, where they should be helping you. They shouldn't just be flicking you a form to fill out once a year and then just finding your deal. They should be there to give you advice as well. And what equipment have you got listed? You know, the 1992 MacBook. Well, there was no MacBooks back then, but, you know, the bubble you had on your desk probably might still be on your insurance policy. You need to think about making sure you've got the most up piece of equipment there. My husband, obviously, he does video production. He's constantly changing the equipment that he uses. So we make sure that we keep that up to date all the time. And you might have items on which costing you a lot of money because you've asked them to be portable pieces of equipment. You need to be insured in cars and as you travel and out and about, but you might not have that piece of it anymore. So go through that list. Have you had a change in your services? Are you covered with interruption? Now, might be a bit late to be looking at that now, given the current scenario, but next time, think about what a big disruption like this means to you, and do you need some coverage? Security. What's happening with you right now if you're no longer in your office? Is it secure? Have you got extra, have you taken anything that's actually valuable from your office if you're concerned about it? Because there are cases of higher levels of robbery because people are becoming more desperate. So do think about security in a scenario and factor that in as a dual purpose, the insurance and security together, because reducing your level of risk in terms of security may actually reduce your insurance costs as well. And shop around. You don't have to use the same insurance broker that your parents did. Go around, again, use your professional networks, talk to people who you know and trust to give you a suggestion. And also a very one is think about you as the sole breadwinner, not just for your business, but for your family. Have you enough permanent death disability insurance in place to support you at the moment? I'll mention it too, but we are in a scenario where there's a pandemic at the moment. Have you made sure that that's all covered? And just revisit your insurance policy and ask lots of questions of your broker. You're not doing it, but they are. So ask lots of questions. So to finish up today, I want you to all remember that there is support. And we are all struggling. Anyone who's not struggling, well done. But, I'll be the first to put my hand up, say there are dark days, fear, there's concern, and it compounds when people around you, even people you passed on the street, are having concerns as well. I listened to a lovely conversations with Adler this morning, who interviewed a professor of social distancing, and he said social distancing, but a professor of social evolution Australia. And he was speaking about the importance of connecting with people physically, but emotionally. So if you see someone walking past you on the street, chuck them a smile. Doesn't run over to you, give you a hug. But that's the same with the way that we behave in terms of business. I'm almost disappointed today that we haven't enabled people to interact, but given the amount of content we had to get through, it meant we'd be here for 4 hours. But there are places you can go to for help. Check out the Heads Up website. There's a lot of small business. They've been recently given a lot of funding to provide a lot of small business support. And even if you just read it, even if you just glance at it, it might give you a few ideas you can do just to, find a better balance with things and maybe not become so stressed. Whatever it is that works for you, whether that's exercise or meditation or not doing work, or maybe it's actually doing work that alleviates stress. But what is, find that and use some of these resources because they're absolutely fantastic. Also, on any of you who are a small business consultant or a support or an advisor, please check out that document, which is actually supporting business advisors through these times, because you find yourself quite bombarded with very stressed clients, and how can you help them? So sometimes you might feel a little bit helpless because you don't know where to go. This document is full of great questions and ways that you can have a conversation with them that guides them to the places where they need to go for professional support. So I can't stress that enough. If everybody does one thing today, and it's to go and check out the Beyond Blue and Heads Up websites for small business support, then I'll be happy. That's a lot of people who will be better off. So in summary, I'd just like to say thank you so much for listening. And there's been some really great tips. David has that he has contacted Beyond Blue in the past. I'm really disappointed that you've had that experience. Please try again, or maybe Heads Up might be a better way of, they're actually two different organizations. So if that's not your best support mechanism and you've lost faith in them, perhaps look at other ways that you can reach out for support as well. Guy makes a good point here that choosing the right channel for your business type is important. Thinking about which type of social media is best for you, and exactly what you said, sometimes Instagram versus LinkedIn think about your business, but ask other people in your industry. Really good resources. How do they, if you admire someone on LinkedIn, then ask them what do they do, and follow them, see what they're doing and see how they're posting. And if you like their content, try and emulate that.
And Alexi, on that, Alexi, it's something that I've been thinking about since the comment was posted. So I'm going to have a think, and if anybody can let me know any quality social media generalists who might be able to talk about this, because I think that is a challenge for a lot of people about which social media challenge to focus on. So I think if I can put something together around that, that might be helpful for a lot of people, where you should be focusing your energies. Because otherwise, my experience with running social media events is that people come in with great enthusiasm and leave looking very grey, because there is so much content and there's so much to think about. So if anybody has any ideas for me about anybody who could possibly host or run a online session like this for me, please get in touch.
Fantastic. And also, if I could just let everybody know that on Small Biz Matters, on the website and also on iTunes and Spotify, there's over 150 podcasts. Now, as I said, all this information came because I listened to the people sitting across the panel at the live radio station, and I really enjoy talking to experts. So if you want to deep dive into any subject or any subject at all, there is stacks of information there. I also broadcast for the ASIC, so I frequently have them. And we just did a wonderful interview this week on Tuesday, which is now live on site, which is pertinent to the current conditions we live in, and talks about JobKeeper and talks about COVID-19. And I interviewed Kate Carnell, and who is, of course, the Small Business Ombudsman federally, and Deborah Jenkins, who's the Deputy Commissioner for the ATO, talking all about how they're administering business payments, stimulus payments. So there's, as I said, loads of information there, many, many hours. If you're enjoying listening to the podcast, it would really help as well if you could give it a bit of a thumbs up and a rating as well. But thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for your questions, those of you, and I hope you've taken a lot of information away that is specific to your business. I hope you don't feel too overwhelmed. But as I mentioned, if you've just taken away 2 or 3 points from today's presentation, and maybe back to the presentation later on, and then pull out a few more bits when you're ready, is probably a really good strategy moving forward.
Okay, I just wanted to say a couple of things. Does anyone have any? You can see my horrible, ugly mutt now, my ugly face. Now, does anybody have any further questions for Alexi this morning? I've seen a few comments coming through. So if you just want to, if there's any last minute questions you have, I think Jane, you had a question earlier regarding contracts, templates and things like that. Now, Alexi, do you have? I'm just going to go back to that question. Where are we?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, because what I've noticed is I always used to send people to the larger firms. They were templates available. So I know Legal Vision had some really good templates, and they still do actually on their website. Just be careful and mindful of those templates, because it's a good starting point, and it's a good way to get the ball rolling. But I would still suggest you talk to a legal advisor or someone who is in that space, who can just make sure that it's still, because if you even remove a couple of sentences, it can kind of fall apart legally pretty quickly. And the other question I had was, your professional association, anybody who's a member of one, or if you're not a member, maybe think about, or just have a look at what resources they have available. Yep. I know, for example, Institute of Certified Bookers has reams and reams. They even give us template emails, which is awesome. So really explore those websites and get familiar with what they have on offer.
Yeah, and I just as a note on that, Business Australia, which is, I think, is a new name for the New South Wales Business Chamber, they're pumping out so much content at the moment. So have a look at their website too. They're giving daily updates, everything from all the news support that's available from the government and other things as well. So I'd highly recommend you going to Business Australia. Just Google them, or just Google the New South Wales Business Chain, because they've got a lot of really good stuff coming out. So have a look at that.
We've just had a point from David. David, thank you. I always appreciate people who are professionals and you making a point about this. But he makes the point that you should really avoid by downloading templates and amending them yourself, legal templates. So definitely seek legal advice if anything is legal in nature. Business, definitely. I mean, it is a really good investment in the future of your business.
Okay. Now, does anybody else have any final questions before we call it a day? So, okay, good. So, if anybody else has any other questions, please let us know. They've got another one come through.
Oh, there's a question there, Will, just in relation to content. Somebody was asking for maybe a discussion. Actually, now here's an idea. I'm just going to put it out there. Maybe we should, Ku-ring-gai Council should host discussion around how businesses of different sectors have pivoted. So actually just giving each other suggestions. So we could set that up as maybe like a bit of a meeting room discussion, which is kind of moderated a little bit, really giving each other suggestions on how you can pivot. Sure. So thank you for that suggestion, Stacey, because I think you can get someone who's an expert in pivoting, but unless it's someone from your industry or giving really practical suggestions, it won't work. Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I think you've covered is that connection, Alexi, particularly around mental health. I'm wondering if we can use this this platform to perhaps run some networking sessions, remote networking sessions. So that's something I'm going to have a look at. So keep an eye out for that. I'll just make sure that you're signed up to our Business E-News subscription. So just go to the website. So that's kmc.nsw.gov.au. And there's at the bottom of the page, there's a subscribe link. So click on that. Make sure you're subscribed to our Business E-News. It's normally monthly, but I'm sending it out bi-weekly at the moment, so twice a month. And that just gives you updated information about all the events that are coming up. So just so I've mentioned the online shop event, which is happening next week. We've got a Facebook session the week after. I'm also lining up a program around grants and government financial support. And also City of Ryde are putting on a whole program as well, which we're supporting, as they are supporting us on this program. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll send some further information out, but we're just looking at a number of topics. So it's really fluid. It's like everything in the current situation. Everything's changing so quickly. We're trying to respond as quickly as we can. I'm trying to reach out to my networks, and please, if you have any ideas or thoughts, please just let us know about possible events that we're doing. Alexi. I forgot as well, we've got a poll to do as well before we lose too many people. Sorry. So there's 3 very quick questions which will help to support the wonderful work that Will is doing and Ku-ring-gai Council is doing. So if I could draw your attention to what's on the screen. Will, can you see it? I can see it, and so please give us your feedback. It's useful for us to know how we're doing, what we can improve. And also, when people are asking what we're doing and how we're supporting business, if we can say that we're actually providing benefit based on the feedback from you, that's really helpful for us, because we need to justify our expenditure on these kinds of programs. So if we can show that it's really beneficial, and it really helps us to continue providing the support that we're doing now. So I really encourage you to do that. It will be really helpful to do. And I'm just, so if you can just have a quick look at that. Are there any other questions coming through? Someone raised a really good point before. I wanted to highlight that. Oh, just in social media, someone raised, I forgot to mention this actually, they follow their competitors on social media. Very clever. It's a great way of seeing what they do things. Oh, and also when I was talking about websites, look at your competitors' websites. And like, you know how I was saying you get small business colleagues to yours, critique their website and then check to make sure that you're not actually doing any of that on your website and better. Yeah, great. Okay, so I think if everybody's happy, you should have my email address. Please drop me an email. I've got everybody who's registered today, so I will. I'll talk to Alexi after this, make sure that I'll send you all the slides, and I'll also make sure this recording is put on the Ku-ring-gai Council website in the next day or 2. We might need to edit just the beginning, but we'll just sort that out, and we'll get it to you. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. It's a very challenging time for all. I think everybody's, things are changing so quickly. There's so much uncertainty. Now, we just want to do what we can to support you. So if you've got any feedback, ideas, thoughts, or anything that we can do, just let me know. Happy to help wherever I can. And thank you so much, Alexi, for a really, really good presentation today. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And speak soon. My pleasure. Thanks, guys. See you guys.